Hello, you are tuning into Uneducated Guests with Josiah. I'm your host, Josiah. I'm a senior in high school that has to do a project for a college class, but I didn't feel like looking anything up, so here I am. Today's topic, I should say, is Shapeshifters / Animorphs, which I honestly thought Animorphs was like the broad term for werewolves, like basically shapeshifting, like people that turn into animals. So I looked it up just to be sure, because I didn't want to use the wrong word and look like even more uneducated swine than I already am. But apparently it's a book series, and I was bad. I looked some of it up, and apparently it's like they get they have to touch like an animal and they take a part of its DNA so they can look like that animal, which I didn't really go that much into it. That's literally as far as I went into it. I looked at some of the book covers, and apparently it's like the third top book series next to Goosebumps and Harry Potter, because obviously Goosebumps is always going to be number one. I have a deep affinity. Is that the word? I have a deep affinity for Goosebumps. I think that's the right word. So we're going to go with it. But Shapeshifters and Animorphs have been in mythology. They've been in folk tales. They're basically all around the world for different words for them, different sort of beings. And I just think that's a really interesting topic because it's on the verge of the supernatural. Oh, and before I forget to mention this is the first in a 3-part mini spring break series, basically, because I'm going to be gone for spring break, so I have 3 topics already laid out. The other 2 are going to be could animals take over the world and Egyptian stuff, basically, which I'm going to go over their gods and why, like, cats and stuff like that, because I just think that's also interesting. These are a bunch of topics that are dear to my heart that I've never really fully invested in, that I've learned a little bit of bits and pieces about, but I've never really gone into it. Could animals take over the world? That's just me hypothesizing. Basically, I'm gonna look up stats and stuff later. But this is a 3-part series, basically inside the Uneducated Guest. So it's going to be episodes, because after I upload before. There's the video podcast coming right before this, which I haven't even tried starting that yet. It's going to be worked on later. I'm just letting you guys know about this now, because it's going to be pre-recorded and pre-edited and just uploaded those days, because I don't want my content to fade, basically. So I'm just hoping this is going to be an interesting topic and hopefully an interesting mini-series. It's just going to be Uneducated Guess. I think episode 13 through 15, I want to say, is what I'm on now. Or maybe it's 14 through 16. Well, you'll know. It'll be titled. And it's going to have something like, say, animal miniseries or something similar to those lines. But when we get into Animorphs and Shapeshifters, a lot of mythology has them as, like, they're related to the gods. Like, they're all technically quote made up, but let's just go into video game gods. Her scene is on Elder Scrolls, which is one of my favorite game series by Bethesda. And this isn't promotion. I wish I got promoted by them. I would actually cry, because they're legends to me, except Fallout 76. It's way too buggy. I do enjoy that game, though. But the Elder Scrolls series, there is a god named Hircine, which is like the god of the Daedric Prince of the Hunt. He's a god. That's a whole bunch of lore I'm gonna get into on my video episode. But they're basically gods, and he's the god of the hunt, and he basically created werewolves, which is actually, I think, is really interesting, because when you think of like werewolf, you don't really necessarily assume where it comes from. But it's always generally either a dark ritual or like a dark god in like movies and stuff like that. And it's really interesting to me to think about that, because werewolves are like some of the most like prominent, they're prominent shapeshifters / animorphs, because that's legitimately what they are. They can go from man to beast, and that's essentially what a shapeshifter / animorph is, and it's so mainstream that people don't even realize it. Like, oh yeah, that's just a werewolf. But is it really just a werewolf? Because Animorphs can basically take DNA from any animal, right? And basically turn into that animal. From what I gathered, I'm gonna do a little more research, but so those aren't from gods. But Egyptian gods, they have got gods that can turn into birds and stuff like that. Like the people or the gods, they can chase. They're basically shape shifting into what is more pleasant for their worshippers, I guess would be a proper term, to like look at. Like some gods would turn into like beautiful women, or like animals. Heck, even in the Bible, God turned into like a burning bush. I mean, that's technically not an animorph, but it is a shapeshifter, because like he could be anything. Angels turn into like balls of light. Oh, the devil was a snake. That's an animorph, technically. I mean, you can consider an animorph slash shapeshifter really anything mythologically like that. But then again, are they alien related? Like, we've got shows like Supernatural, or can't think of any other alien shows really with it. But they basically in Supernatural there was a shapeshifter that was really weird. I don't remember what it was actually, but I remember it shedded its skin because it like made itself look like other people, but it would shed its skin after it was done with it, and basically stop looking like that person, and it would look like something. But it basically took the form of another person, and when it was done using that person's like identity, it would shed the skin of that. That's technically a shape. Well, I mean, that is a shapeshifter. But when you think shapeshifter, I honestly think there was something in Star Trek that was like a blob of something, and it literally just turned solidified into like someone else, or like maybe an animal or something like that. I thought that was really interesting. So there is like a lot of aliens that are shapeshifters, and like you'll see that in cartoon alien shows, live action alien shows. I guess that's the real way. Or are shapeshifters only animalistic, like with Animorphs? They can only turn into aliens instead of actual people. And like that also goes into I think Wendigos. Not really sure about that word, but basically they just turn into different animals and stuff. But Wendigos can also turn into people, so I guess they would just be plain shapeshifters instead of just Animorphs, because they can also mimic voices to lure their prey and stuff in, which is kind of horrifying if you think about it, because they can just go on about killing anyone. But shapeshifters and Animorphs is really interesting to me because they can literally be anybody they want or anything they want, and they just don't care. But it could also be used for obviously very evil deeds, like you could impersonate the president, just kill everyone. Because oh wow, I completely skipped over. Sorry, someone's walking by the door again. Okay, there's a lot of people. Oh, it's 8:13. Never mind. That's when the Heartland classes get in. But at the Captain Marvel movie, those were shapeshifters. I'm not sure if they could turn into animals or not, but they definitely turned into other people. I can't remember what their name is now. The Green Goblin looking people. That's such a bad way to describe them, but that's what they look like. They basically can turn into it showed they turned into the one little girl's mom. They've turned into, I think they did turn into Captain Marvel at one point. Yeah, they did. Oh, this is spoilers. Spoilers about Captain Marvel. If you guys haven't seen it, I am sorry. I completely forgot. That movie's still new. I am sorry. So just skip ahead to like 14 minutes. I'm probably not going to talk about it for that long, but I rant a lot. But they can change into different people and stuff like that, which you learn throughout. That's how they take over worlds. And it's just really interesting to me because that's the true powers, I think, of shapeshifters. If there's enough of them, they can legitimately take over everything and anything, because how would you be able to stop them if they can take the form of anything? Like, I think there was this one movie. I can't remember what it was. It was a really old movie, but it was based in Antarctic, and these things. I actually don't think it was shapeshifters, or maybe it was shapeshifters, or maybe it was a parasite. But it looked like the people, and the only way to tell the difference between them was to do something with their blood. I think heated up and it like jumped out, and so that was kind of goofy, but that is legitimately how they detected it in the movie. I'm pretty sure, and because they could change basically anything they wanted, and that was actually it's pretty interesting. But they could change into I think they changed into the sled dogs, they changed into people on the team, and I think they just kept killing or something like that. But shapeshifters and animorphs are just really interesting to me. I probably keep saying this because my head's just everywhere today. But the animalistics in them, I don't think is necessarily true for all lore. I'll probably get more into lore whenever I research this because I don't know much about lores on this. I just know, about wendigos and werewolves as the top ones that are shapeshifters and animorphs, I guess. But I mean, if there's werewolves, there's also werebears. It's like werewolves except they turn into, giant bears. That's kind of interesting. That's also an animorph. So I think there could be a certain degree, but I'm not sure if it's just beast-like, because what if there was a werefox? Like, there's werewolf, werebear, werefox. That sounds interesting. Like, instead of, a dangerous one, you just turn into a fox. But then again, werewolves and werebears are, still human-sized. Well, if not bigger. So would a werefox be a giant human, or would the human's bone break down and crumble into fox size? Because that's another thing about the transformation process I don't necessarily understand. Would their bones always break down? Because they're changing at the genetic structure. They are a completely different being at that point. They're breaking every single bone they have, or shoving everything down in order to change into whatever they are. That's why a lot of shows show the first transformation being horrible, because their genetic chemistry is changing, and that obviously isn't pleasant. Because I'm human, right? Imagine if I was just a mouse. I presume that would hurt a lot, ridiculously, because you would change mentally too, which that actually makes sense that werewolves and werebears and different creatures like that can become feral because they're thinking with their animalistic brain and stuff like that. This is where I'm gonna cut this episode short, so elevator music, go. Hey guys, I am back for Shapeshifters / Animorphs Part 2, and I just got done recording my video podcast, and I'm going to be editing that either tomorrow or the day after, because I'm still doing the 3-day, I'm still doing the 3-part miniseries, which takes precedent over it, because the video podcast is Friday's episode. Then I've got to set up the videos for my time that I am gone. So I'm trying to basically get everything done, and I'm just a mess. And my teeth still hurt because I had to go and get I had to get my tooth drilled into, basically both of them, and my jaw just hurts. So if you saw how much I was smiling during my video podcast, I promise Jace is a smart guy. He knows nothing about any video game, and that was pretty painful. I'm sorry if you enjoyed that, good, but if you didn't, I'm sorry. But shapeshifters are people who shift into a certain animal, in this case wolves, at will, and can remember themselves in both forms. They are generally born into this, although can depend on the story, and so runs in families. Some stories say that these shapeshifters are superior to humans, and if one should have a child/children, with a human, it will always be a shapeshifter. However, some stories say that it is to do with genes, usually recessive in these cases, and the children/child can be either human or wolf. In most stories, however, a person cannot shift into a wolf until a certain age, usually 16. So the parents would not know until then whether or not their child/children is/are a shifter/shifters. I'm sorry, this is a lot of acronyms. I'm just going to go with singular from now on. Also, a shapeshifter usually have a decreased healing time, meaning they can heal much quicker than a normal human or wolf. Werewolves are creatures that change involuntarily by the light of the full moon. These creatures are part wolf, part human. In the way they are covered in fur, have wolf noses, eyes, ears, paws, and other features, but do share some similarities with humans in the way they stand. For example, many werewolves do not know they are a werewolf, and in their wolf form cannot remember their human self. Werewolves are not born werewolves and have to be bitten or scratched by a werewolf, usually in wolf form, to become one. Some similarities between werewolves and shapeshifters, aside from the wolf and human forms, is that in most stories is that silver, such as bullets, can kill or injure both of them, although usually in the case of a shapeshifter, depending on how much silver the wolf is touching or has in them. It slows down their healing process drastically. There are, of course, some exceptions to these. For example, in CBBC's Wolf Blood, they can shift at will into a normal wolf, but do also forcefully shift by the light of the full moon. They also have decreased energy on the day of the new moon. Also, their first shift is always done on the night of the full moon. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, werewolves turn into a wolf on 3 nights in a month, the night of the full moon, and the 2 nights either side of that. However, other than that, everything about the werewolves is the same. The Harry Potter series has both werewolves and shapeshifters in it. For example, Remus Lupin, first introduced in The Prisoner of Azkaban, is a werewolf. He changes by the light of the full moon and cannot control it. The other martyrs, James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew, are shapeshifters. None of them are wolves, although it's the same idea. Also, it's revealed in The Philosopher's Stone that Professor McGonagall is also a shapeshifter. Turning into animals isn't always fun. The Animorphs struggle with ant and termite morph hive minds, while a taxon morph makes them ravenously hungry. But in The Hidden, readers see the reverse happen. An ant walks across the blue box, gaining the ability to morph. The result is horrific, as the ant has also acquired Cassie and begins to morph into some awful combination of the two. It starts screaming and cannot stop, overwhelmed with the sense of being an individual for the first time in its life. In the end, Cassie is forced to stomp a creature that looks something like her to death. So that's pretty dark book series, Animorphs is. Because I thought that was the overall term, I was wrong. It's actually an entire book series. But the entire David subplot of Animorphs is seriously dark, but it culminates in the solution in a scene that's so messed up it's impossible to forget. David joins the Animorphs as a 6th member when it's discovered he found the blue box and gained the power to transform. But he turns on the group when things don't go his way, attempting to kill most of them before ultimately being outwitted. They convince him to transform into a rat, and Rachel lures him into an abandoned rock out in the ocean. There, he's trapped in a cage for long enough that he becomes stuck in the morph. The Animorphs listen to his anguish, angry screams until the clock runs out, and he becomes stuck in the morph. They can leave him there. A human trapped in a rat's body for the rest of his life. So that's really, really dark. A morph cannot be acquired with someone else's morph. You need the original DNA. You cannot morph from one animal to another without going through your base form. Morphs are not physiologically identical to the original animal. Modifications are made by the scaffold device to accessible, and the morphing is triggered by thought. Tobias still retained thought speak during the interim of after being trapped in morph and before the Elemist intervened. The scaffold device does not modify DNA, it is technology. Otherwise, those who have morphed into each other, in particular Tobias to Axe, could morph again. Lauren was able to acquire Tobias in the late in the series. So those are just what I went off of. I've got aminoapps.com and ranker.com. I feel like I used a lot more, but that's all I have put down. So that's all the time I have for today. I hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you next time.